Good morning. Let's get started. Welcome. Good morning, at least for the Westerners. For the East Coast of the North American group, good lunch. Hope you enjoy your lunchtime. Anyway, my name's Steve Holzer. I'm the digital product evangelist for BIMobject. I'm going to talk today about how your content is enabled beyond just getting specified. How does it stay relevant? You know, how does it really get purchased? So let's jump right in. And during today's talk here, any questions that you might have, I'll try to keep my eye on the question pane here and pick them out as we go if they're relevant. And if not at the end, we'll certainly address any questions that you might have as well, whether it's in the chat or the question pane, whichever you choose. Anything that we don't answer during the webinar, we'll get to afterwards. And so feel free to answer anything relevant or not to today's topic. I'm happy to address any of those as well. We got some other webinars upcoming that were in your original invite series. So feel free to join for any of those that you might be interested in as well. The webinar is being recorded. It'll be available to you and anyone else that maybe wasn't able to make today's show that signed up. And even after the fact, anyone can register later on, or you can share the registration link, and folks can actually view the recorded version of the webinar as well. So that should be available a few hours after we finish up. So throughout today's discussion, ask yourself, I always like to start these sessions off with a question that hopefully, and not hopefully, I submit to you, I will have answered, and if I haven't, make sure you ask me the questions. But how many checks do you receive each week from architects and engineers that specified your products? That's the goal. So much of the building product manufacturer's life of positioning yourselves in the marketplace has been about getting specified. And while this talk is not to diminish getting specified, because that is still quite important, in today's world to remain relevant through the full building life cycle is really how you end up selling product. You've all seen probably this study done by Paul Teicholz out of SciFi at Stanford a number of years ago. And I kind of took the liberty of calling out Steve's opportunity index being, and maybe for those of you that haven't, this index shows labor productivity of various industries throughout the 40, actually this is the updated version. So the original version was done in 2004. This was updated in 2012 because we all thought, oh, surely in those 8 years we've gained, but we actually lost. So what this shows is the labor productivity of all non-farm industries compared to construction. And most all other industries had gained over 250% labor productivity over the original base of 1964. So in that time period, construction lost nearly 10% productivity. So that 260% delta is what I call our opportunity index. And that opportunity index represents about 35% of every US dollar spent in construction industry and building the built environment yearly as waste. That's very well documented in a number of research studies, and given we're in a $9 trillion a year global industry, and most all of us, whether we're based in the US or not, are in a multinational market, that's a lot of money and a lot of opportunity. But the key was that to this whole study, why? You know, this was a white paper that Paul did, and why? And I have it on the right there, and feel free to do a little research on your own if you want. But the bottom line was, it was the use of, we were using paper-based thinking, and we're shuffling it around with what we call technology, which, you know, a few years ago was faxes. Now we've graduated to shuffling PDFs attached to emails. This is not a productive use of technology in any way, shape, or form. We got to get to digital. So what's happening to the current processes? Well, this is what has to happen to current processes. Um, a few months ago, we all talked and about disruption, and I'll show a little bit more about that in slides. But I'm sorry, disruption. It doesn't. It's not working. It hasn't worked. We've been continually practicing the same thing over and over, which is the definition of insanity, and expecting a different outcome. And that being said, back to my earlier comments, it's all still paper-based thinking, paper-based processes, PDFs, submittal forms. These are all paper-based, and that's what we have to move out of. Just to give you a couple of comparisons, there were 253 automobile manufacturers in the U.S. In the early 1900s. It dropped to 44 by 1929, and now it's down to very few. But this was due to industrialization. They actually destroyed and replaced the processes that were used. Henry Ford, being one of the keys, destroyed and replaced the way automobiles were being built. So processes are being replaced, and we have a whole alphabet soup of acronyms: VDC, IPD, BIM, and many others that come up every day. The bottom line is, though, 88 years of progress on that slide on the right. That's the Empire State Building going up. I'd submit to you, other than the lack of the visibility of a tower crane, there's probably not much different in that building being built that was done in 1930 from today. In many buildings, maybe some styles, maybe a few different material uses, but the methods, the processes that went about were all drawing and paper-based. 40 years of disruption, quote unquote, in the construction. We rearranged the deck chairs on the Titanic. We haven't done anything with it. We think disruption's emailing PDF drawings instead of rolls of blueprints. And it doesn't work. We have many years of proof that it hasn't happened. What will allow these processes to be replaced, not modified, not disrupted, but replaced? It's digitalization. That's the key. Converting all of our processes to the digital economy. Digitalization, the definition that I came up with and found was it's the use of digital technologies key here to change a business model. Again, changing a business model is not emailing PDFs of a plan. Part of what we're doing here at BIMobject is a phrase I coined is we're establishing the new built world order. And since this applies to the built environment, the man-made environment all the way around, we impact the planet through building, whether that be infrastructure, whether that be hotels, whether that be schools, whether that be buildings, homes. So the only way to do that, we believe, is an internet-based platform where all building product manufacturers make your products available to designers, like Lego. How do they fit together? This is what has to happen in reality in the field. For whatever reason, I think we've been hesitant to acknowledge during what has historically been our design phases, what really happens to get a building built. Often the design is just part of an intent, and I know in a lot of our legal documents we talk about design intent, design intent, design intent. Intent means that we're using communication platforms that require interpretation. If not, it's design facts, it's design figures, it's design period. It's not design intent, because anytime you have that requires an interpretation. Anytime we require an interpretation, it's like having an open wound. It's just sitting there festering, waiting to become an infection, because every person, there's no wrong interpretation. There's only each person's interpretation of some representation, whether it be a drawing or words. We can take that out with actual digital content. In the BIMobject ecosystem, we address this full building lifecycle in many ways. But at the core, the very foundation of any ecosystem, and we like to call ours even interoperable ecosystem, is building product manufacturers' digital content. And when I say content, it's not just, again, it's not just PDFs. It's not just a geometric representation that looks kind of cool as a piece of furniture. Yeah, that's very important. There's no question about that. But it's much, much more than the visualization, or, you know, so much of even the three-dimensional content files that have been used today and have been out there for years get pulled in and then flattened out into a drawing. That drawing is an electronic drawing. It still requires an interpretation. You have to look at the floor plan, and then if you want to really understand the full picture, you have to go to, you know, page E7 and look at the elevation to see what the glazing looks like on the vertical surface. Those are all interpretations. In a modeling, you can actually immerse yourself and experience it. So in the BIMobject ecosystem, the core foundation is the digital content from you, the building product manufacturers, and that is used to build a complete facility digitally first. And as it's built with our platform and others, but to a large degree, we have an overall ecosystem that is able to be leveraged, where your digital product content remains relevant through the full building life cycle. So not only is it part of the design, back to the old terms, intent, it's included in that model, in that data store of that facility that's going to be built or going to be remodeled even. We have ways of doing that today where we're harvesting existing facilities and setting them up so they can be utilized digitally for managing and renovations and operations. But anyway, you're able to, as your products are used in those models, you're able to actually get actionable leads. I'm amazed a lot of times with some of our clients that they're not actually following up on the leads. We've got thousands of them. Every time someone downloads one of your objects off of our platform, because we require user registration, and it's free, no user has to pay, but it's a free registration, you are able to see who downloaded it, where they are, what their role is, and able to contact them through the BIM mail system. Even through that, you're able to include, you know, your sales team can include their contact information. So you can actually work with these people directly. We have other ways, which are outside the scope of this particular talk today, of getting from specified to purchased, but we have many, many other ways that you're able to interact and remain relevant throughout that life cycle of getting in the design, getting through the engineering phase, getting in procurement, and having all of the actors that are at each of these stages, the building owner, the architect, the engineer, the contractor, are able to reach out to you and you to reach out to them through a communication system. And not only that, then your product information, your digital product information remains relevant, again, through that full building life cycle. That building, that new university dormitory building that got built today, in 15 years, your content and the information about your content is still available. So how do we do that? Well, this is kind of the heart and soul and the basic entry point for building products on the BIMobject platform. This is the web browser version of content, and it's available to anyone. I suggest to you that we also offer, and it's really effective for a modeler's workflow, because instead of a drafts person now we have modelers, but we have plugins for many different authoring tools like Revit, like SketchUp, like ArchiCAD, Vectorworks, even file formats supported like IFC and many others that again, we're not specific to any one particular modeling platform. We are addressing interoperable content for the industry, and we are a software agnostic platform, so that this content can be utilized through any number of various file format types. Again, keeping your content relevant throughout the whole building process. I mentioned a minute ago about follow-up. So this is just a screenshot of our BIMobject demo, but I would submit to you that you'd be shocked to see some of the other companies. I was working with one yesterday, and they have days they have over 200 products downloaded by architects all over the world, engineers all over the world. And one question I get, especially here in North America, is, "Hey, Steve, that's cool that this engineer over in Turkey downloaded, my seating, but we don't sell Turkey. I really don't care about Turkey. It's not a market that I'm interested in." Or, "Hey, we had a guy download our air handler out of Budapest." Well, we don't sell anything outside North America. What you really need to understand in this economy today, not just economy, but this industry of the built environment, is it's a global industry. The larger engineering and design and even construction management, most especially in this day, right now, construction management firms have disparate teams spread all over the globe. So that guy that downloaded the VAV, or the air handler out of Budapest, might have well been working for Arup on a new hospital expansion for Minneapolis, Minnesota. That is relevant. He's bringing your content into something that's going to be built here. It may not always be the case, but often it is. And the way you follow up on it and stay relevant and connected to it, one of the ways is through our BIM analytics. And this is also available. Again, we have other learning sessions that'll help you, where we have a BIM analytics core local, so you can have different sales categories, different territories, if you will, only seeing what they need to manage in their own territory, all the way down to a zip code or a postal code global level. So historically, this industry, back to our old way of thinking of drawings. Hey, I got to put a sink in that countertop in the plan view. Oh, cool, here's a 3D sink. Let's drop it in. Oh, I need to have in the mechanical room, I need an air handler. Oh, here's one. I'll drop it in. Have you ever been into a building that was cool with a generic HVAC system or that generic air handler? I promise you, you have not, because it doesn't work. There is no values in, it's not able to heat a building or cool a building. So it has to have specifics. So that means that at some point in the process of getting that facility created, in reality, someone had to make a decision at some point on what it was going to be. And I can cite 100 examples, if you want to, offline, of places where it shows the decision points for all of these decisions is happening much earlier in the process. So yes, getting specified initially is part of it, but the real decision points are coming much, much more quickly, in the procurement phase, which is happening even much sooner than it used to, because it is actually, we have real facilities that are being fully digitally constructed instead of drawn. They're modeled. One, I pulled in this one image here was from SimScale. SimScale is one of the larger, which albeit very typical now, virtualization cloud platforms. So part of the design process is designing using real content. I get phone calls from SimScale saying, "Steve, can you have one of your salespeople contact XYZ, manufacturer? We see often that their products are being specified, but we really don't want to use them because they might have the digital geometry, but they don't tell us what the various airflow coefficients are through that VAV box, or even what the weight of that unit is, or many other properties, digital constructs that are attached to that particular system." So in this case, SimScale, they're actually doing a virtual design and simulation where they're looking at airflows in a given facility, and even gets so sophisticated where they can actually place this room that you see in the image here in a certain geographic, latitude, longitude, and do a sun study, and based on the current glazing in those curtain walls and a current HVAC system and current airflows with specific outlet devices, air outlet devices, specific duct sizing, specific coefficient of drag within that duct, specific CFMs coming out of an air handler. They can see if that room is going to be cooled or heated to what is considered a level of acceptance prior to it ever being constructed. So they'll swap those out. But what happens right now, the reason I get calls from the likes of SimScale is they're saying our engineers don't have time, and it also is an opportunity for error. If we have to go out and pull down somebody's submittal sheet that's a PDF version of a cut sheet and put and actually hand type those values in, that not only is it old school, it's an opportunity for error again, and it's a time waster. So what's happening is people, building product manufacturers who don't have their content available in this holistic digital format are really losing work, and you're not knowing it. You never even know that you lost an opportunity because you're not getting called. To even they will just skip it. And on that same note, not just the digital aspects, but a partial or a subset of your products. For instance, there was a large piping valve manufacturer, and their strategy a few years ago was, let's put our top 20 SKUs that we sell, because it was viewed as getting digital was viewed as advertising and marketing, and it is partially advertising and marketing, but it's much more than that. It's as critical as the truck that backs up from your production facility and delivers your products to your distribution hub. Your digital life of your products from design through all of the stages of the building life cycle are just as important as that truck, and you've got to remain relevant. So anyway, these are key aspects of remaining part of today's built environment and economy. So it needs to be real data connected to real content. As I said, in this little vignette here, we have a dishwasher. So we got some 3D geometry, cool. 2D drawings, and it's still needed today as part of the bridge. Especially that'll go away with the way we are able to view in a very short period of time. But a lot of we need the UV data, the CO2 emission. In this particular case of a dishwasher, we need to know what the heat gain is when that's running to be able to size the HVAC system correctly. What's the water consumption? What's the electrical consumption? That's all part of the larger virtualization that happens with AI, with artificial intelligence, or even less magical, if you will, machine learning. Buildings are actually looking, and they're designing electrical circuits based on equipment that's dropped into a model. Machine learning is able to actually create what can be on what circuits and what the circuit loading is, and even design panels. That's here today, guys. I mean, that's not something that is tomorrow, off in the future. So for you to be relevant, you have to be able to get your content fully digitalized and remain relevant through the full building life cycle. Digital tooling, it allows us to build it twice, build it right. Everybody says, oh, well, why do things twice? Well, we're not really doing it twice. We're doing it once digitally before we do it once physically. Again, back to my 35% waste factor on research, and I'm happy to get any backup to that if anybody is really interested in it. But a lot of that is from rework. A lot of that is from misinterpretation. A lot of that is from unforeseen events of conflicts. Now, sure, we're using some clash detection tools today, but that's even after the fact. Why should we have to run clash detection after the fact? We don't need to run clash detection after the fact if we're working in a collaborative way in a common data store with roles defined and rights available to different actors, whether it's a mechanical engineer, the structural engineer, the architect, a construction manager, a purchasing manager. Those people all should have access to the same information, the same exact content, and that's only done through a common data store. Like our Hercules platform allows that. We're getting just recently in the U.S. have opened that up. It's had great success in Europe. And it's a collaboration tool for multiple actors to be able to work in the same environment. And read and see the same exact items. So one quote that here actually is from me, yours truly. In a previous life, I was vice chair of the market education team with National Institute of Building Sciences. We developed the U.S. the U.S. version 3 of the BIM standard here in the United States. And one of the things we saw was the greatest impediment to ever getting BIM at the time, which digital building is BIM is certainly the core of it, but ever having that successfully implemented was real digital content, which was not out there. We need to have real digital content of actual building products. And I don't, again, mean just geometry. Geometry is cool. Geometry works for clash detection. But in this image that I have on the screen, in that case, they want to run water flows through there at maximum capacity to make sure it's going to feed the fire sprinklers or whatever processing piping this is running and perform. They're looking at virtualization in performance. This has been done in other industries for decades. Back in the 80s, I was privileged to work with a guy that had worked for McDonnell Douglas aircraft. Every part of every aircraft was actually modeled, and that aircraft was actually built digitally, and they were running load testing on wing loading and things like that based on the metallurgy of the parts and how that was put together. The automobile industry has been doing the same thing for years. It's time. It's actually way past time for this industry to adopt this and be able to happen. So what's that going to give us? It's going to give us a digital twin. The digital twin, I'd like to call it a living, breathing, dynamic, functional twin that is actually a communication center of a real facility that is being used to operate it. It's being used to manage it. It's being used to understand how the building itself is being used. So we're actually digitally constructing real facilities instead of drawing them from the beginning. And we even with our scanning technology and our digital building platform, we're also even able to go out and what I call harvest an existing facility and begin using that digitally and embellishing that with content to not only just manage it, but even through renovations. So that the whole idea is as that existing 50-year-old facility that may have 150-year lifespan in the case of many universities around, as it gets morphed into renovation or new use or just updates, life safety updates, that we're integrating this digital content within an existing facility and embellishing it further. So the demand for that digital content for your products that are going to be used in any renovation or new, it's real. And the real value is it's a coolness factor and it is helpful for visualization, but the real value is in the metadata. It's in the properties that are associated with it. So there's been a lot of things that have changed in our world in a pretty short time. Now, 20 years ago, Google and search, what they were mutually, nobody knew what either one, why was Google mattering to search? What was Spotify? Why did it matter to music? What do you mean? What is social media? This is just a few years ago, folks. And what we have to understand is this industry is ready for this. It is happening within the industry now. I don't want you to miss the boat. That's probably part of why we're sharing a lot of this and why we built our platform out the way we have. BIMobject is those things evolve for building products. BIM supply, I haven't mentioned that yet. That's another piece in that full building life cycle where it aggregates those parts out of that digital model. And again, the generic ones are not, they're going to get substituted out. And at a much later point in the process for a while, but later on, they're not even going to be considered unless you have your full digital content available. It's not even going to be considered. So having it in a digital format available to over 900,000 registered users that we have on our platform right now is really a key. So how does it get used in this way? Well, I mean, here's one example, a screenshot of Hercules. This is one of our building product manufacturers that actually has a configurator they created. It shows every single CMU, every single special item, and it's all broken down. You can go to any level of detail you want in these. Here's another view. These again are tools that, based on your rights, you can see over on the right side of the screen. This was a demo. Obviously, we're not at liberty to show some of the specifics, like the UK Ministry of Justice, we're managing on this platform all of their prisons and police stations. Obviously, that's not something that's publicly available, but it's the way they're managing the content going in those now digitally. So we've drilled in. This is real content of one of our product manufacturers. I believe this is Apollo. These fittings are specific, and the one highlighted there in blue on the right, you can see the exact properties of that. And again, it's going to be all the flow parameters. It's going to be all these. They're going to be able to run water utilization through this virtually before it ever gets done. So one of the keys of the whole industry, everything I've talked about today, is communication. So in the old days, an owner communicated, for his hotel to an architect what he had to have. That architect communicated to an engineer what they thought they wanted to see design-wise. That engineer said, okay, this is the size of the beams that we need, and that along with the design intent plans got communicated to a procurement and construction firm. They actually interpreted all of that content and brought a bunch of material out to the site and put it together, turned it over to a building owner, and hopefully it matched what that owner wanted when he first told the architect what he was looking for. Today, it's bulletproof with digitalization because there's no interpretation. Everything is digital. It's ones and O's. It's black or white. It is yay or nay. There's no, this might work. It's one or the other. And unless you're in the digital world, you're out. Same thing, in or out. A few facts about our platform: 97 out of the 100 largest architectural firms, and I say that's cool. That's good. They're involved. But a little more importantly is engineering firms. 95 out of the 100 largest engineering firms, because they're the ones that really start this digital construction, this digital virtual construction, because they have to make it work in the end. They've seen the value already. But here's the real. We got the actual construction firms, 74 out of the largest, and I think this probably is outdated, to be honest with you, because I know we've been quickly picking up a lot more with our digital building platform. But these guys are the ones that have to make the rubber meet the road. They're the ones that have to execute. They have to interpret. They have to create the real building from the intent. And once they know that by getting it to a digital communication platform, it removes errors in big ways. So our CEO, Stefan Larsson, who is really, along with a team of incredible, brilliant other folks, have brought together what we do here as a platform. And Stefan has shared that, we are the construction industry's equivalent to Spotify. It's not about music, but it's about a cloud service, and it gives access to anyone in the world about any building component there is. And we're a community for all actors, back to the full building life cycle. We build tool sets, we build interoperable engagement platforms that enable your building product content to remain relevant through that full building life cycle and even beyond. So let's look to see any kind of specific questions anyone may have, or chat items. Question-wise, on one of them that we had was, why do I need to have all of my products defined digitally and not just my main big sellers? Great question. Number one reason: a mechanical design engineer that's putting together a fire sprinkler system, he needs even that one 8-inch valve that you may only manufacture 4 of a year. He needs that 8-inch valve to make a complete system. And it's cool that you have your sprinkler heads, because that's goes in every building and thousands of them potentially. It's cool that you have the T's. It's cool that you have, you know, the basic fittings, but without that other, let's call them more unique pieces, or less frequently sold pieces, he can't develop a complete system using your products. So he's probably going to go to someone else that can give him that full system. So I've run a little bit over today. Any these other questions that you have, feel free to reach out. I will will be posting the recording of this, so feel free to review or share with colleagues or anyone else. And as always, you can reach out to me. I should put my email address here, steve.holzer, Holzer, at BIMobject.com. Thanks for being with us today. And in your invite, there's some other webinars coming up. Make sure you sign up for those. They're also relevant and talk about other specific areas. We have one coming up on our BIM Analytics core by itself by my colleague Brian Helms. He'll be sharing with that one. I have another one that goes a little bit more into the actual communication through flow throughout the full building lifecycle, and how your content can remain more relevant specifically within different aspects of that. We have another one coming up about digital products, so we're going to dive a little deeper into the properties and why each of your pieces that you manufacture, what kinds of content is needed, and that's coming up in another couple of weeks. Also, don't forget, we'll be in a big way at Autodesk University again. That's another place that you can come join us, get specific questions answered. We'll have a very large contingent of our team there, our global team, as well as the folks throughout the States here that can carry on some deeper discussions on specific things you may have questions with. It's in the middle of November, and stay tuned for that, as well as BIMobject Live is our global building product manufacturers gathering in Malmo, Sweden, coming up October 9th and 10th. Suggest you even look into that. We've got some amazing speakers coming that are building product manufacturers just like yourselves, and they're going to be sharing how they've been able to really succeed in ways they never understood in the digital environment. So once again, Steve Holzer, BIMobject Product Evangelist, thanks again for your time. See you on another one soon.